Good evening. I welcome Regional Council to a meeting on January the 24th, 2024. I will now call on Will Short, Regional Clerk, to do the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig. Present. Councillor Deutschman.
Present.
Councillor Erb.
Councillor present.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Hunick.
Yes, sir.
Councillor McCabe. Present. Councillor Nowak. Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Urbanovic. Present. Councillor Williams.
Present.
Councillor Wolf. Present. And we have regrets from Councillor Harris, Councillor James, Councillor Liggett, and Councillor Solonen. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Chinatuan peoples. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements, and their contributions to our community. I would now entertain a motion to go into closed. If I could have a mover, moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Shantz. Please use your e-scribe to go into close. Okay, thank you, Councillor Hunick. We are going to close in accordance with Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 for ongoing negotiations related to a program vendor, ongoing negotiations related to proposed services, receiving advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege related to a potential acquisition of property, and receiving advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege related to potential acquisition of property. Councillor Erb, have you cast a ballot? Oh, thank you. So he's in favor? That is carried, colleagues. We will now retire to the Waterloo. I'd like to welcome everyone, and I would now entertain a motion to reconvene in open session, moved by Councillor Nowak, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor, please use your e-scribe.
Why did I do this?
Okay. Colleagues, before we start our proceedings, I want to take note of a few important dates upcoming in the next week. Tomorrow marks the beginning of the Green Square campaign, an annual observance that occurs on the week leading up to January 29th, which is the National Day of Remembrance of the Quebec City Mosque attack and action against Islamophobia. The Green Square campaign remembers the victims and the survivors of this attack, with the Green Square representing the green carpets of the Quebec City Mosque. Over the next week, you may see many of your neighbors wearing a green square as a personal symbol of solidarity against Islamophobia. Many local buildings and landmarks, including a few regional facilities, will also be lit green this week. This year marks 7 years since that horrible attack. I want to thank community organizations like the Coalition of Muslim Women who are organizing an event this Sunday so that the victims and survivors of Islamophobia are not forgotten. And on these anniversaries, we are reminded of the ongoing impact of Islamophobia and the active role we all have to play in combating hate, Islamophobia in our community. We cannot take religious freedoms or our much valued diversity for granted. On January 27th, it is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, an annual day of remembrance for the victims and survivors of the Holocaust. It marks the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. On Holocaust Remembrance Day, we remember the 6 million Jewish people and the 5 million non-Jewish people who were systematically killed as a result of hate, anti-Semitism, racism, and discrimination. In the context of human history, the events of the Holocaust are chillingly recent. And while they occurred before many of our lifetimes, we still see widespread hate and racism in our world today. They are reminders that we must all take a stand against anti-Semitism and work to a more inclusive and local and global community. I want to thank the Waterloo Region Jewish Community Council for sharing a poster exhibit called Shoah, How Was It Humanly Possible, for us on display this week. The exhibit, open to council, staff, and members of the public, is on display at the regional headquarters, and I encourage you all to visit. Thank you, colleagues. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, we have no presentations and we have no petitions. We will now proceed with delegations as listed on the agenda. I would like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. For those who are joining us in person, please proceed to the podium when you are called upon to speak. Please press the button at the base of the microphone to turn it on. If it is lit green, the microphone is on. Anyone who is registered before the deadline will have 5 minutes, and anyone who registered after the deadline will have 3 minutes. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in immediate removal from the meeting: interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning your camera on at inappropriate times, or hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations: please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. Our first delegation is Dan Dredger. You have 5 minutes. Dan, welcome, and please proceed to the podium.
Good evening, Madam Chair, and through you to the members of Council. My name is Dan Dreger, and I serve as the Executive Director of Beyond Housing, which some of you may remember by our former name, Menno Homes. I'm pleased to present this evening on behalf of the agencies identified on the screen: Habitat for Humanity, Indwell, Satellite Community Homes, Supportive Housing of Waterloo, and Union Cooperative. We are just one cross-section of the incredible nonprofits working in Waterloo Region every day to help provide and maintain quality, affordable housing for households with low incomes. And it can be challenging work, but the results are worth it. As nonprofits working in this sector, we rely on the incredible support we receive from this community, as well as the leadership of and the collaboration with the region of Waterloo. As the service provider responsible for affordable housing, I know the region of Waterloo takes this responsibility seriously. One example of how you have demonstrated leadership in the past, using the tools available to you, was to provide exemptions for regional development charges for new affordable housing projects. This model was eventually used by the cities and then required by the province, but you did it first. You showed others how it could be done. The idea of housing over parking lots or on other underutilized land is another opportunity to lead by example. The concept is simple, straightforward, and easy to understand, and that immediately raises all sorts of questions, like how will it work, where will they live, who will live there, what about losing parking, what will it cost, who will manage it, what will the leases look like, what about liability, etc., etc. Good questions, all of them. For me, the common thread isn't should we or shouldn't we build affordable housing. I think everyone here agrees that we need more affordable housing. No, the common theme is how would this work? To which the answer is, well, we don't know. So let's study and explore this idea to see if it's feasible. Now, I'd like to ask you to take a moment and imagine yourself as someone named Margaret who is struggling to find housing that she can afford. As a senior who relies on government pension, Margaret's total income is $22,341 a month. Per year. I wish it was per month. Or $1,862 per month. Current market rents in Waterloo Region are more than her total income. And when she reads the paper or listens to the news tomorrow morning, she may be learning about this idea for the very first time. And she'll likely think, wow, what an interesting idea. I wonder how that would work. As members of Regional Council, you are in a position to respond to Margaret. Well, we don't know exactly how, but we're going to examine it to find out, because we're committed to looking at all options. Collectively, you have all sorts of hard decisions to make on a regular basis. Tonight's agenda alone includes decisions about new hybrid buses, student transit passes, the chronic homelessness, just to name a few. So thank you for your service. Every once in a while, a motion comes your way that is easy to say yes to. So I invite you to savor the moment. Approve this motion. The agencies I'm speaking on behalf of today, your partners in the work of providing affordable housing, want to know if this idea is feasible. And Margaret, well, she just wants to know that you are doing everything possible to address the housing crisis. Thank you.
Dan, thank you very much, and impressive timing, right on the button. I see no questions, but thank you for taking time to come out, and thank you for what you do on behalf of the community as well. Our next delegation is Dan Clements, Citizens for Cambridge. Welcome, Dan. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Chair Redmond and councilors. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dan Clements, and I'm from Cambridge. I'm here tonight, representing Citizens for Cambridge. Citizens for Cambridge is a group of citizens applying both thought and effort to better our community in progressive ways. We're not experts, but doing research and listening to experts is at the core of our volunteer work. We support this motion and we encourage council to support it. Next slide, please. But more than just us, instead of delegating or sending letters, these names that you see on the screen now have asked us to strongly delegate on their behalf for Waterloo Region, its municipalities and townships to make already owned assets available for affordable housing, including parking lots, vacant properties, and buildings that can be repurposed through development. And I'm sure you know, if you don't know all of those names, I would be surprised. We all know that there is a substantial community support for this concept, but I would like to address 3 frequent questions about affordable housing over parking that we hear quite often. The first question is, has this ever been done before? Making already owned assets available at low cost or no cost for appropriate uses is hardly a new idea. Many examples exist across our region. Next slide, please. Housing over parking lots is also hardly a new concept. Here are just a few actual examples. Just Google housing over parking, and there's many, many more that can be seen where the housing has been built over parking. Next slide, please. This interesting design of housing over parking is from the web homepage of Maxwell Building Consultants that you may know from Waterloo. There is no underground parking. The buildings are above the parking in an open air kind of concept. So indeed, it's housing over parking. You may also notice, if you look closely, a parking garage in the middle between the buildings. This demonstrates that if there is any concern in the future about the possibility of future parking needs on a candidate parking lot, a simple parking garage can always be added if ever needed. And these buildings that you hear, which is a drawing, are actually under construction now right here in Kitchener. Next slide, please. In this design example, Patrick Simmons from Martin Simmons Swears Architects used the dimensions of a random city-owned parking lot in Cambridge and asked his team to do this preliminary, attractive 44-unit design to show what is possible and what the potential is for what it might look like. The second question that we get asked a lot about is, will we not lose a lot of parking spaces? And a few points about that, where very few parking spaces will be lost for the actual building. The building will normally be in the least used area of a parking lot. Some parking lots are definitely underutilized. Some types of affordable housing require fewer parking spaces than others. Resident parking spaces are needed primarily at night when many parking lots are close to empty. Many parking lots are in areas of the city where having a car at all is less necessary. Every parking lot will need to be assessed. The third common question that we hear is, will not building above parking lots be more expensive and eliminate the benefit of low-cost or no-cost land? And the biggest challenge for affordable housing is location. Solving that is the #1 criteria. Housing developers that Dan Dreger put up, one of their biggest challenges is land, trying to find a location. Financial challenges are there, of course, but they are significant, but they can be tackled once a location is identified. Even if the cost savings on the land are eaten up by extra costs to build, there are huge benefits from infill development that brings more residents to live, work, play, and support local businesses in an important 15-minute walkable neighborhood. In conclusion, affordable housing is a crisis that we're all well aware of. Solving it is a huge undertaking. It must involve support from the citizens as well as all levels of government. Affordable housing over parking lots can be one component in a solution. We realize that you can only work with Waterloo Region assets, but we urge you to lead by example. Thank you for your attention. I hope this helps. And thank you to Kitchener for a vote the other night in support of affordable housing as well.
Thank you very much, Dan. Again, your timing is right on, and I know this is an issue that you've been passionate about for a while now, so thank you very much for taking the time to come in.
you.
Next delegation is Brian Doucette from the University of Waterloo. Welcome, Brian. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair Redmond and Regional Council. My name is Dr. Brian Doucette, and I am a Canada Research Chair in the School of Planning at the University of Waterloo and a nationally recognized expert in housing. Using city, or in this case, region-owned land to build non-market housing is the single best municipal strategy to address the housing crisis. There's a growing understanding that market-driven supply isn't going to solve this problem alone. We don't need supply in and of itself. We need to think critically about what kind of supply and for whom. And now the problem is that the market builds a lot of houses for wealthier households on the edges of urban regions and a lot of small apartments and condos in urban areas, most of which are bought by investors. And here in Waterloo region, that figure is about 80%. So we need to think about the kind of housing that the market is unwilling or unable to build. Now, local governments don't have the budgets to do this themselves. What they do have is land. Land that can be used to build what the market isn't building. Land to be used to create the kind of supply we need, not just the supply that's most profitable. And let's make one point clear. Public land should never be sold to developers to build market rate housing in the hopes of getting a few extra crumbs of affordable housing. Why? Because we have very few planning tools to actually shape what gets built on private land. Inclusionary zoning rules set by the province are very weak, and local governments don't have the power to zone for things like family-sized units, purpose-built rentals, or affordable housing. On privately owned land, developers make these decisions and generally build what is most profitable, not what is most needed. The story on public land could not be more different. Local governments can set the rules based on what kind of housing we need. I'll give you some examples. Ontario has very weak rent control rules, but there's nothing stopping a city or regional government from implementing its own rent control on land that it owns. Toronto is actively talking about this at the moment. As I said earlier, most condos in Waterloo region are bought by investors, which increases the demand for housing and also shapes the supply. Investors love small units, and we see a lot of small units getting built. On public land, you can put covenants stipulating that any owner-occupied unit, such as a condo, would have to be the primary residence of their owners, not bought as an investment property. Whistler in British Columbia has a very successful model based on this with public land. But very few people think this way when discussing public land. But it's true. On public land, you can set the rules. You can do things differently. On public land, you can do things that simply aren't possible elsewhere. When you start to understand this, you begin to realize the power, potential, and possibility of using public land. And let me stress, it doesn't all need to be social housing, though we need a lot more of that. So I want to sketch out a vision for a region-owned site that would involve a range of public, nonprofit, and even private sector players working together. Take a large region-owned site. We could start with parking lots, but really we're talking about much more than just region-owned surface parking lots. Put out a request for proposals for housing. But within that request for proposals, put in certain criteria. And I'm just going to give you some ideas here. Not to say this is the model, but here's something that could be done. Let's say a quarter of that housing has to be social housing, a quarter co-op, a quarter rent-controlled rental, and a quarter do what you want, with the one condition that if any units are sold, they have to be the primary residences of their owners. Investors and speculators are not welcome. Within that, let's say we need 25% in each of those categories to be family-size units. Now we're starting to get housing that we need. And I guarantee you that innovation, partnerships, and nonprofit actors who are simply priced out of building on private land will be involved in these projects. This is just one example of what could be possible on public land. The St. Lawrence neighborhood, built in Toronto, has a similar approach. It was done 50 years ago with federal land. Something like this on a site like the Charles Street bus terminal would be bold, innovative, and groundbreaking. At scale, this would make Waterloo Region a national leader in housing. But if this is too ambitious a start, look at the YW project on Blockline Road in Kitchener, a random piece of land owned by the city. I don't think 5 years ago there was a plan for this site, and today there are two fabulous buildings. Using public land to build non-market housing is an essential strategy to solving the housing crisis, and I hope you pass this motion this evening. Thank you.
Brian, thank you very much. We do have a question. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, can I have a copy of what your papers are so I can hand them my CAO? Can you send me your presentation?
Yeah, I can also send you some research that we've done on this. We have a big report that was out, through the chair. We have a big report on thinking beyond the market and public land. We did a panel with some folks at UBC this week or last week. I can send you all that.
Actually, just send me your information link with the report so that I can give it to my CAO.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give you my card.
Thank you.
Councillor Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm having trouble here with the e-scribe. If I may, Madam Chair, through you, when the motion passes tonight, what do you see specifically as the next step for regional council or any council?
Through the chair, I think you want to find a project and a site that you can develop quite quickly.
Okay.
And try and get something off the ground, get some momentum going. That vision that I sketched for multiple sites and being, having multiple different criteria, that will take time to develop. But I think finding some nonprofit partners who could really benefit today and would be essentially a decision maker to have access to public land, who are priced out when they're competing for private land. So you've heard from others today who are working with these nonprofits. I think you want to develop something quickly. The Blockline Road site in Kitchener happened incredibly fast, and it worked with timing with federal government financing. But I think you want to try and get something developed quickly to build some momentum while you're thinking of a bigger strategy of what to do with this land.
So it's a model, if I may suggest, a showcase model of accomplishment by doing one particular site. That's what you're suggesting?
Through the chair, I mean, you can do both at the same time. You can develop a vision for how do we use a lot of this public land while also trying to develop a pilot with a nonprofit who maybe has the expertise in home building, maybe has some access to financing, but doesn't have access to sites that they can build.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Foxton is going to hand you some business cards. She approaches you in friendship, and I would acknowledge Councillor Hunick. Do you want to? Do you have a question?
Sorry, Chair Edmund, did you call on me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, I was distracted by Councillor Foxton business cards. I'm sorry, Brian, I did not bring my business cards, but I would also benefit from sharing your research. So if you could send your proposal, your presentation to all of Regional Council, that would be much appreciated. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us tonight.
Thank you. I think you recognize you've been well received, and if you want to send information to the clerk, we will distribute to all regional council.
Thank you.
I really commend you for your hard work. And did you give your class the night off tonight? Is that why they're not here?
I'm not teaching this term, so
Oh.
I'm doing this kind of stuff. And through the chair, one of the things I didn't get a chance to mention in my presentation is I've got a couple members of my research team who are going to start looking next month into the idea of affordable housing over publicly owned parking lots, and we'll be working on a report that we would be delighted to share with not just people here at Regional Council, but this idea has so much traction across the region, Ontario, and beyond.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would now ask Scott Hamilton from Cambridge to come forward. Welcome, Scott. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you can you hear me? Thank you very much, Chair Redmond, and thank you to Regional Council for having me here today and allowing me to delegate on item 18.1, affordable housing on regionally owned assets, which includes parking lots. My name is Scott Hamilton. I am a Cambridge resident. I'm the father of 2 young kids. I have a 5-year-old. I have a 3-year-old. I work 2 jobs. I have a full-time job, and for my part-time job, I am the Ward 7 councillor in the city of Cambridge. But I'm not speaking today on behalf of Cambridge Council. Everything I say here tonight is from my own opinions, it's my own beliefs, and my own words. So I'd like to thank Councillor Wolf and Councillor Deutschmann for bringing this motion forward to us all at the regional level, and for the supportive and enthusiastic conversations that I've had with them about this concept along the way. As we've been hearing, the scope of this crisis is national, it's provincial, and it's local. I know in Cambridge alone, we have over 1,500 families on the wait list for affordable housing, and unfortunately that number seems to be going up daily and weekly. And this affects all walks of life. We've all heard the word stigma. People hear affordable housing and they assume there's going to be cars on cinder blocks, crime, broken windows, and that's absolutely not the case. What we heard at Cambridge Council when this item was discussed, and what I hear from my constituents, is that affordable housing is needed now for teachers, for tradespeople, for master's students that have just graduated and are looking for their first home. And people are now moving out of Cambridge to places like Listowel and driving in during the day just because they need to afford a place to live. So the scope of the crisis calls for innovative and bold solutions. This is an old problem, it's an old crisis. The only way we're going to get out of it is by thinking and acting in new ways. Old paths will not take us to new places. And creating affordable housing, truly affordable housing, is a path we all need to tread together as municipalities and as a region. The elephant in the room, this may not have passed in Cambridge, but my mentality always is, if you get knocked down, you get back up, you dust yourself off, and you ask yourself, what happened? How can I learn from it? How can I move forward? And this is something I think we can all move forward on together. And I'm confident in saying that because of the tremendous amount of support that I've received, and I think all of us have received since we've started bringing these motions forward through different levels of government and through different municipalities. Everyone from faith-based groups, young people, labor groups, academics, nonprofit organizations, BIAs and local businesses, and the community generally has reached out to express their support. I've even had gentlemen that have gone and made t-shirts with the concept of the motion on it, walking around at public events saying, we've seen these parking lots, we've seen the underutilized lots in our urban city cores that we call concrete wastelands, and finally we can start thinking about them in new ways, we can repurpose them. And the benefits have been discussed, I won't review all of them. We talked about the location, but what does the location do? We know that in order to revitalize the cores of so many of our municipalities, we need density, we need intensification. It creates walkability, it creates the potential for placemaking, it increases security, it boosts local businesses. And above all, if we can do all of those things while increasing our housing supply, that's a tremendous benefit. And as Professor Doucette discussed, if it's done through a municipal government or a regional government, the public retains control. You don't lose the asset. You can set the terms, and you also retain ownership of the land, which is something that doesn't happen if this asset goes into the private market. So my vision for Cambridge and for Waterloo region is that we all move forward on this concept together as municipalities and as a region, as partners. We listen to experts, we listen to researchers, specialists, workers in the field, staff, and we take their advice and we make bold choices to lead when we're facing a crisis. This is what I feel taking underutilized city parking lots and transforming them into housing can do for us. One thing that I will add to the list that Mr. Clements mentioned, something that comes up frequently is, well, there's going to be problems. I don't know about this, there might be some problems that arise. Well, of course. The only time you can ever have perfection, a perfect solution, is in the realm of mathematics. But we deal in the realm of politics, of society, of history, of differing opinions, of subjectivity. There will always be differences. And anytime we do anything with any motion, of course, there will be problems that arise. But our job is to be bold, to lead, to look at those problems and to think critically about how to fix them, to take what's working, to move it forward, to advance it. And if the problems are so significant that we can't solve them, then we move on and we say, we've tried, we've learned from it. How can we do better next time? So as a city and as a region, I'm hoping we can all move forward together. We can solve these problems together. And to me, it doesn't matter where this concept starts. What matters is that we work together, we finish it together, We start something that could be great, we're leaders, and we see where it goes from there. Thank you very much for having the time to, giving me the time to delegate, and I hope the motion passes. Thank you.
Scott, thank you very much for delegating. Councillor Hunick?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Hamilton, for persevering in the face of a very bold and innovative idea. And I'm excited to support this motion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Kevin White from Kitchener. Kevin, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening. I was at the November 29, 2023 Strategic Plan and Budget Public Input Meeting and wish to share some thoughts and laughs, apparently. This delegation may be funnier than my previous iterations based on the reactions of council members on November 29th.
Maybe one day, Mayor Salonen, us, millennials and Gen Z that are behind us would get to have a home one day.
I hope that is audible.
Getting on that bus is the second hardest thing to do in the region of Waterloo. The first is finding an apartment for rent.
So that's comedy. I happen to know that those delegates are wonderful and supportive community members. My presentation is not about them. However, I hope to entertain you with similar punchlines. The Food Bank of Waterloo Region's annual report and record articles inform us the overall cost of living continues to rise, affecting everyone, but especially our most vulnerable community members. More and more people than ever before are struggling to afford to put food on the table, and this is reflected in the record-breaking numbers reported by the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. 11% of households reported they had a job, but not enough income to buy food. 21% of households accessing local food support services reported they receive Ontario Works or Ontario Disability Support Program payments, but didn't have enough money left over for groceries. Approximately 1 in 3 food bank users are employed or receiving government assistance, both of which proved inadequate when it comes to affording both shelter and food in Waterloo Region.
The first is finding an apartment for rent.
35% of the people supported by the Community Food Assistance Network were under the age of 18.
Maybe one day, Mayor Salonen, us, millennials and Gen Z that are behind us would get to have a home one day.
1 in 10 households in Waterloo Region are using the food bank to find a level of food security. Network partners delivered 33% more food hampers to people than in 2022. More than twice as many new households are seeking support from the food bank in 2022. Speaking of new households, in the Waterloo Region Community Foundation's Vital Signs report, they noted that for every 4.7 newcomers to Waterloo Region, there is only 1 new housing start. The Smart Prosperity Institute estimated there is demand for over 13,400 units in Waterloo Region among existing residents who would like to move out of their current homes but cannot due to the lack of suitable housing.
The first is finding an apartment for rent.
The region of Waterloo estimates $530 million in lost revenue over the next decade due to reduced development charges. That might now fall onto property owners through increased taxes, while social infrastructure might not be built at near previous levels. The More Homes Built Faster Act removed housing services from the list of services for which a development charge may be imposed, with potentially significant implications for the region's affordable housing and shelter services. While this may make it cheaper to build new construction may not have supportive infrastructure around the bill due to lack of municipal funding. As of June 2023, home prices in Waterloo Region had risen by an astounding 295% since January 2005. Home prices in Waterloo Region are now some of the least affordable in the world. The ratio of home prices to income in the region now stands at 8.0 times compared to just 3.3 times at the end of 2005.
Maybe one day, Mayor Salonen, us, millennials and Gen Z that are behind us would get to have a home one day.
The escalating home prices are alarming. However, a potentially larger concern lies in the steep rise of rental unit prices, particularly as 37% of renter households live in unaffordable housing, along with 14% of homeowners. These households are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. In a worrying trend, the 2022 annual increase for rent and vacant units was 5 times faster than the rest of the decade's average. The vacancy rate for units affordable to the bottom 20% of renters was 0.0% in 2022.
Kevin, can you finish up, please? You're out of time.
Yes, I'm quite close. The rate at which we are losing affordable units doubled from 2016 to 2021, and the growth suggests this will continue. The wait list for Waterloo Region community housing keeps getting longer, risen from 3,100 in 2008 to 7,645 in 2022. That number is higher now. The fewer people are being housed, 1,034 households housed in 2008, accounting for a third of the households on the wait list, but only 268, which is in 2022, which is only 3.5% of this. Knowing all this, Regional Council underfunded their own staff housing plans by providing only 10 of the $14 million requested in the budget. The region provided $14 million for 18 people that don't even exist, but could not come up with $4 more million for thousands of people in the region that do. It has been 20 degrees outside, and hundreds of people tonight will be sleeping inside tents or less across the region. And I would like to make an effort to get training in the art of comedy so that I can do it properly, but the region cut funding to the arts as well.
Thank you, Kevin. You're out of time.
Yeah, okay.
I see no questions. The next delegation is Eric Bodendorfer from Kitchener. Eric, welcome. You have the podium and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of council. I'm delegating tonight to express my concern with the decision of this council to reduce the amount of money allocated to the plan to end chronic homelessness and fee-for-service requests in the housing stability system by 28%, or $4 million, in the 2024 budget for this region. I realize that it's too late to change your decision on this budget allocation, but I think it is valuable to generate discussion about this in the future. Hope that budget considerations will take the larger picture into account. I find that the most direct way to express my disdain for this decision is to juxtapose the approval of the Waterloo Regional Police Service budget increase with seemingly limited ability to apply public funding to social services. For the past 2 years now, I've been happy to see serious debate about proposed WRPS budget increases resulting from motions put forward by members of this council. Councillor Deutschmann put forward a motion for an additional surplus of $1 million from a staffing miscalculation be taken out of the proposed 2023 WRPS budget. That motion did not pass. Councillor Hunick put forward a motion for the return of half of an identified $9.3 million surplus amassed by WRPS over the past 3 years to the region. That motion, too, did not pass. That $4.65 million would have more than covered what was needed to fully fund the proposed social services directed toward housing and homelessness in the 2024 budget. Instead, these organizations are made to do more with less, as they're made to do every year. Councillor Redmond has said that the choice between funding police and funding social services is a false binary, that we need and should fund both. But actions speak much louder than words, and the actions of this council serve to reinforce the binary that this region can only provide full funding for police services or full funding for social services. It is clear which one this council prioritizes. The argument to support police budget increases is often based on the fear of increasing crime severity in the region. There is also the argument that Waterloo Region has lower per capita spending on police services when compared to similar municipalities. Neither of these arguments hold much weight in consideration of a report recently released by the University of Toronto Press showing that there is no correlation between increasing police budgets and crime severity in municipalities across Canada. More money spent on police does not result in a safer community. Research does show that policies addressing housing, poverty, mental health, and other areas adjacent to crime can be effective in reducing both crime rates and crime severity. All of these areas of focus fall under the umbrella of inequality. Inequality creates conditions where those who are the most vulnerable have little recourse than to turn to crime to survive. There is no better indicator of inequality in our community than the growing homeless population. There are currently over 1,700 people who are homeless in this region, 579 of which are chronically homeless. Our community housing list has ballooned to 8,325 individuals, or a 7 to 10 year waiting period. I've seen many people refuse to sign up for this list knowing that the waiting period is so long. We currently have 570 spaces for supportive housing, the kind of housing needed for those who are coming from chronic homelessness to remain housed. The number of supportive housing spaces has to double to accommodate the current chronically homeless population. This is an expensive and necessary investment. The need for answers to address the crisis faced by homeless community members is never felt more keenly than when we experience severely cold weather, like we have seen over the past couple of weeks. To the majority of people in this community, this deep freeze is an inconvenience. To those who are homeless, it is a matter of life and death. When someone's survival is at stake, the consequences of crime seem far less severe, especially when compared to the potential benefit of making it through another day. This is the calculation that at least 1,700 people in this community are forced to make regularly. When we as a community invest in the capacity of police to enforce the law over our most vulnerable community members at the expense of the capacity for services to assist those community members, we're only setting ourselves up to perpetuate cycles of crime and poverty. Let's not forget that those who are homeless are also far more likely to be victimized by crime in the community than any other community member. Let's not forget that Indigenous and racialized community members are overrepresented in the homeless population. These community members are far less likely to seek police assistance when victimized by crime, as they have been historically victimized and continue to experience victimization by police to this very day. To invest in police at the expense of social services is to adopt the pessimistic view that the only way to create a safe community is through controlling community members. To fully fund social services dedicated to increasing the capacity of vulnerable and at-risk community members is to adopt optimism and the potential for personal and community growth. I hope going forward that this council chooses optimism. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Great timing. I see no questions, so thank you very much for taking the time to come in and delegate. Colleagues, the next agenda item is minutes of the previous motion. I would entertain a motion to accept reports. They're numbered 9.1 through 9.7. If I could have a mover. Moved by Councillor Craig, seconded by Councillor Wolf. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Colleagues, that is carried. Thank you. Communications, the council information package and correspondence listed below was distributed to council electronically. These items will be received for information unless anyone has something they would like to bring forward. Seeing none, I'd also note that there's additional communications item that is not in your agenda. It was received after the addendum package and was sent out, and it has been distributed electronically to council. I would now entertain a motion to go into committee of the whole. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Hunick. Please use your e-scribe to vote. And the motion is that council go into committee of the whole to consider reports. Colleagues, that is carried. The first report we're going to consider is finance. Craig Dyer, Commissioner of Corporate Services and Chief Financial Officer, is here for any questions. They are agenda items 12.1.1 through to 12.2. Yeah. If I could have a mover. Moved by Councillor Vanovich, seconded by Councillor Nowak. Councillor Nowak, you have a question.
I did have a question.
Please go ahead.
On 12.1, page 18 of that report, excuse me, it suggested that that company is discontinuing building these machines. I'm just wondering if we know why and if that should be a concern. I'm thinking down the line when we need maintenance and parts and all that sort of stuff.
I think Rod Regier can answer that.
Yeah, through you, Chair Redmond. Our understanding is that they're shifting their focus to electric vehicle buses instead of hybrids. The market appears to be moving in that direction. I don't think our staff have any concern regarding the availability of parts moving forward. It's they have an obligation to continue the production of parts for servicing into the future.
Okay, just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that question. So it has been moved and seconded. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Thank you, colleagues. That is carried. Next agenda item is Committee and Health Services Summary, January 16th, 2024. And there's one item with a Part A and Part B. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Foxton. Second by Councillor McCabe. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Thank you, colleagues. That is carried. I think some people's e-scribe is a little tired tonight, but everybody got their vote in, so thank you for that. The next agenda item is the Summary of Planning and Works Committee on January the 16th, 2024, items 1, 2, and 3. It's posted. If I could have a mover. Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Wolf. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Colleagues, that is carried. Thank you. The next agenda item is Administration and Finance Committee Summary, January 16th, 2024. We'll now vote to approve this summary. There are two items. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Williams. Please use e-scribe to vote. Thank you, colleagues. That is carried. The next agenda item is Board of Health Respiratory Season Update, and Dr. Wong, I believe, is joining us virtually. So, Dr. Wong, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Good evening, Council. Sorry, I'm just gonna... As we progress through the respiratory season, Public Health continues to monitor respiratory virus activity in our community. Consistent with other parts of the province, Public Health is observing moderate COVID-19 activity at this time. Influenza and RSV activity are low. Our wastewater data indicates that the COVID-19 signal in both Kitchener and Cambridge remains elevated, but may be trending down. Further to my Board of Health update in November, there continues to be an increase in what's called invasive Group A streptococcal infections, or invasive Group A strep. In 2023, there were more than double the number of cases reported to our healthcare partners than in 2022. This increase has been noted across Ontario, across Canada, and in other countries around the world. Group A strep is a common bacteria that causes infections such as strep throat and skin infections, and most often these infections are not severe. More rarely, what's called invasive Group A strep occurs when the bacteria spreads beyond the places it typically infects, such as the throat or skin, into sterile parts of the body, such as the lungs, blood, spinal fluid, or around muscle tissue. Invasive Group A strep is a very serious and sometimes life-threatening infection. So it is important to seek prompt medical care. This infection can spread through direct contact with secretions from the nose or throat of an infected person, or by direct contact with infected sores on the skin. Signs of a severe infection include things such as a fever with sore throat, rash, or flu-like symptoms that become increasingly severe. A wound or bruise with pain that is out of proportion to the injury, or is red, swollen, or blistered, or severe pain with movement of the neck. While invasive infections can occur in people of all ages who are otherwise healthy, persons with chronic medical conditions, the very young and those that are older, are at higher risk. We do not yet understand why we are seeing, We do not yet understand why we are seeing this increase in invasive group A strep infections. It is important to take precautions such as staying home if sick, practicing proper hand hygiene, properly caring for cuts and wounds, and seeking medical attention when you feel the need to. Staying up to date with immunizations is also important. Influenza and chickenpox increase the risk of invasive group A strep. Public Health was engaged with local media and has been engaging with local physicians to share this information. Finally, I would like to provide an update about Public Health's ongoing work to fully enforce the Immunization of School Pupils Act. Currently, there are approximately 20,000 elementary school students and 10,000 secondary school students with incomplete immunization records. Elementary students received their first notification in this school year in November and December of last year, and those still outstanding will be receiving a second notice in mid-February. Secondary students received their first notification in this school year this past January. We continue to expand our clinical services and immunization records review to respond to parents in a timely fashion and to ensure access to immunization along with family doctors. We are also working with school boards to ensure timely communication to parents. We have launched a social media and communications campaign to promote more parents to respond and ensure that their child is not suspended. We strongly urge parents to contact their primary care provider or public health if they have any questions or are not sure why they received a notice. Parents are encouraged to respond to the notification as soon as possible. While we have ample availability at present, vaccine appointments and wait times to have records reviewed may take longer as we approach the deadline. In closing, staff and appointments are ready and available to help. Thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Wong, and I just want to assure you it wasn't me calling you on your cell phone.
It's my mom. I remind her, not Wednesday nights.
Councillor Hunick, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Edmund. Dr. Wong, you noted that COVID levels are trending down in Kitchener as well as Cambridge. Does that also apply to the city of Waterloo and the townships?
Yes. The provincial wastewater program cannot sample every city, so it takes samples in a couple of representative areas in the region, and that can be Waterloo, Kitchener, or Cambridge. Although they because of the similarities that they see sometimes between sites and the trends and the trends that they see in terms of when one site is trending a certain way, whether or not another site will also trend a certain way. That is why they have prioritized a little more frequent sampling in Kitchener and Cambridge versus Waterloo. What we can take from the trends that we're seeing in Kitchener and Cambridge is that overall in the region, we are seeing the signals start to trend down. The signals are still quite high, and they have been for a few months now. That said, the impact of COVID has not been as high because we have overall a higher level of population immunity at this time.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Dr. Wong, and I hope you call your mom after we're done, because you should always call your mom back. But I was just curious about the immunization rates. Is that sort of the typical amount, or have we caught back up from the times when we were not able to immunize due to COVID? Or, yeah, just kind of if you could give us a sort of a lay of the land.
For sure. This is fairly typical for Ontario now in terms of the number of students who are not up to date yet in terms of their records. At least a lot of these students may have been immunized, but their records have not been provided to us. And so, we can't update them. And that's why, we're asking for parents to check their records and provide them to us if they get a notice. So yes, what we have seen is that following the pandemic, there was a significant drop in the number of routine immunizations. It affects more the younger children as compared to older children who got a lot of their shots earlier on when they were younger. And it had also a lot to do in the beginning, with not a lot of family physicians available. And so, in fact, more than a year ago, we started the process of analyzing records and sending out notices in the last school year to parents about records that were not complete yet. And since then, since the last school year, we've been trying to encourage parents to get their children up to date. Even this past summer in 2023, we organized additional clinics. And then in this school year, we again provided notifications in November. That's for the elementary students, and then January for the secondary students, because the suspension for the elementary is earlier in March, and the suspension for the secondary is later in May. And so we've again sent out notices, and we have since that time progressively increased our capacity to immunize or to review records to update them. And so we have not had to date issues with that, because we've progressively increased our capacity. But it definitely is a significant number, more than we would normally see, roughly 3 times what we would normally have to process in terms of incomplete records. And so, it's quite unusual. What we have found, I'll just finish with this. What we have found over many years of enforcing the Immunization of School Pupils Act is that generally you can't get to levels that are high, like 95% coverage, which is recommended. Percentages like that, which are recommended, unless you do actually enforce the act. And so we do find that this process, now that we are going to enforce it this spring, this process is actually quite essential to bring these records up to date.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you very much for that. It's helpful, very helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. I see no further questions. Under matters under Committee of the Whole, the Plan to End Chronic Homelessness 2024 budget update, and I will ask Peter Sweeney to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Just a couple of opening comments here. Staff are grateful for the opportunity to come back to Council this evening with a recommendation on how to prioritize the new $10.2 million investment in our homelessness effort across Waterloo region. A couple of things before I open it up for questions. The first is that there is nothing in this report or in the options in the lines in the budget that is new. All of the items that you see here in this report were initially brought forward in November and again in December. The only thing we've done is just adjust the amount on some of the line items. The second thing I'll say is that staff took the direction from council in the motion to review the entire package of efforts that we brought forward through the budget. As you might imagine, there are several permutations that we went through to look at how we might come back to you. And ultimately where we landed is in the recommendation that we bring before you, basically to recommend that council chooses one of two options. The first option allocates the $10.2 million investment proportionally across all budget items relative to the original request. This option allows all previously identified objectives of the plan to move forward in 2024 across each priority area in relative terms. Option number 2 prioritizes and maintains the initial fee-for-service requests as presented in November. In this option, the budget is prioritized towards fully funding these new community-based requests, while other priorities are scaled back somewhat. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or take any feedback and comments from council.
So thank you. I have some speakers. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Sweeney, for the report. And just for a bit of clarification for people here and also people watching, I just want to be clear. Like this is new money that was put into the budget as of budget 2024. I mean, I feel like some of the commentary out there in some parts of the community is that there's been a cut. I mean, in fact, we've been continuing to put additional monies, certainly well beyond what we've traditionally done into this department and into these into trying to support the system, the shelter care system, the building more affordable homes, the managed encampment, et cetera. I mean, I think the total amount that right now that we've estimated through our budget process that the region is putting into social housing and monies to address the homelessness is upwards of $180 million now. And I know there's still more work to do. I think it's, I just really wanted to be clear that this is new money going into the system, correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And again, as you mentioned, this council and this organization have continuously invested significantly to address the crisis of chronic homelessness in this community. And over the last 3 years, the percentage increase in this budget is well over 100%. So this is significant, and this is all new resources being added into the system, yes.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Yeah. And I really very much appreciate the work that you and your staff team are doing. It's obviously a really challenging situation, especially with the weather that we deal with in this country. But I know that your team is putting their heart and soul into this, and certainly really appreciate the work that you do every day. My other question is, I'm curious about the rent supplements and the additional money going into it, obviously much needed. I'm just wondering, in such a tight housing market, how quickly do you think you could actually find additional houses or homes for people, like rental units, et cetera, for people? Like, how quickly do you think you can start to get that out the door?
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Chair. It's a good question. It requires a bit of work. We work through our partner agencies to basically get these out the door. I've had many conversations with staff, and the budget that we've put forward, the original budget, and the amendments that we've brought forward in both options are ones that we can and feel confident we can get out the door in 2024. What's really, really important about this is portable rent supplements are the cornerstone of a housing first strategy in communities around the world. And in this community alone, there's a 99% success rate. So this is an area that we continue to need to invest in, and we're confident we can get these out the door as we've suggested here.
Can I just ask one more quick follow-up?
I've got other speakers, Councillor McCabe, but happy to put you back on the list. Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you, Chair Redmond, through you. Mr. Sweeney, if you could just give me some clarification. I'm trying to recall, and I will get to some of these questions. I thank you for the information you provided me previously, but I still need some clarification on some of those items. But just generally, the fee for service, was that always part of the plan to end chronic homelessness? I thought the fee for service financing was for those organizations that had applied through a process that we had developed. And I wasn't clear that that was part of the plan to end chronic homelessness. So if you could just clarify that.
Certainly, and through you, Chair. So I'll go back to November the 7th. We presented on that day 2 specific reports. One was the result of staff's review of the fee-for-service applications, where we recommended the funding for those that were eligible in the criteria. And then the companion report was the plan to end chronic homelessness specific initiatives. We decoupled them at that time because the fee-for-service funding was its own envelope, and we felt it was important to articulate and highlight the results of that call. And then as we went through the budget process, we put them back together, and then the motion to invest the $10.2 million and to come back with a list was inclusive of both the plan to end chronic homelessness budget lines and the fee-for-service line. So that's why we bundled them back together here.
So that you're talking about Chair Redmond's motion. Did it include both fee-for-service and the plan to end chronic homelessness?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes, it did. It was inclusive of both.
Because I lost track, because my understanding was that we had the fee-for-service, and then you had, the plan to end chronic homelessness. We're not there yet, but let's get some money started on this thing. And there were certain items that, there were certain things that you were considering funding. And then there was, I thought, an allocation of money that would be set aside for future consideration in April. And so my thought was that 4.2 million was coming out of that future consideration because there was no specific item attached to it. So yeah, I'll have to admit it's my own fault. Clearly, I bungled that and not realizing that the two. But anyway, put me back on the list, please, Chair Redmond, or I'll just request to get back on the list. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hunick, please go ahead.
Chair Redmond, I want to be clear that this is not an easy decision. Both options are rather heartbreaking. It helps me to note Councillor McCabe's comments that it's not actually a 29% decrease for either option. It's actually a 60 or 71% increase in funding or thereabouts. So that's really exciting. I'm nervous about decreasing the fee for service agreements because I think many of those proposals were strategically low. However, in the interest of equity and fairness, it seems best that we choose option A. And my question, though, then, slash irony, is it true then that the only organization will get the full funding they requested is a better tent city, which didn't meet the criteria we set out before?
Through you, Chair, although different funding envelopes and different processes on balance from a real dollar perspective, yes, what you've suggested is correct.
So I just want to point out to my colleagues that I find that very bothersome and inequitable.
Thank you, Councillor Hunick. I'm going to go to Councillor Bravanovich.
Well, thank you very much. And I had an opportunity to forward some questions to Mr. Sweeney just shortly before the meeting. And I'd like to ask some of them here. The first one has to do with the lived expertise prototyping project that's referenced in the report. And there is budget allocated of $148,000 under option 2, $163,000 under option 1. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what exactly, are we prototyping? Is this funding going to be needed in 2024? Are there some other mechanisms such as partnerships and donations of materials that could be used as an alternative in order to leave some additional dollars in some of the other streams?
Thank you, and through you, Chair Redmond. Councillor Ivanovich, if I can, the first thing I'd like to point out for all of Council is, I mentioned earlier, there are many permutations that we could have taken in any direction on this. One thing we chose consciously not to do was prioritize one line item off of another. And so the reason why everything is coming back in some proportional scale is because there is no real priority here, and we didn't want to look at an outreach effort versus a rent supplement and try to play those off. So we've come back with everything, and so staff's view is all of this is important and all of this is needed in 2024. Specifically to your answer around the prototyping, I'm actually really excited about this opportunity, and the answer is we're not sure yet in terms of what this will look like. But if you recall, when Alex from the Social Development Center came here to present back in September, she talked about encouraging the system to see itself. And we have made a commitment to root this work in lived expertise and lived experience. We are learning how to do that. We get better at it every day. We still have a long way to go. This is a really key, tangible example where we will work with folks who have that lived expertise and that lived experience to try things that wouldn't likely come out of our day-to-day operations and business. And so those prototypes are still, we're talking about them. There is, whatever prototypes come forward will be a collaborative approach between our partners at SDC and regional staff to determine what those are. So they're still to be determined, but they will very, very much be rooted in let's try this and let's try that, coming from the voice of those who know better.
I hear you, but I guess, part of my concern here is that there's some aspects to these programs that, seeing them being cut back is quite concerning. And so I think we may need to either take some additional time with this or, I can appreciate staff for giving us their best professional advice, but, as a council, we may need to do some things differently. In terms of the hybrid shelter budget request specifically, and there's 550,000 reference in option 1 or 496 in option 2, is this separate from the capital investment that's noted on page 4 of 5 of the staff report?
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, specifically the line items that you reference are strictly for the operational costs to run the new hybrid shelter. You'll see that they've been adjusted from 764. And so when we brought the initial proposal, what we brought forward was a capital plan to basically replicate what we've done at Herbs Road with 50 cabins, but that we would begin operation of the hybrid shelter on a location to be determined for the last 3 months of the year. So we had 3 months of operating. In order to adjust this into the funding envelope of 10.2 million, what you would see is a commitment to still, again, determined by an actual location to be able to do this. Should we be able to source that and get the cabins built, we would just scale back the capital costs. We wouldn't build it. We wouldn't start with 50, and so we would adjust the operating and the capital accordingly to get it started on a smaller scale in order to maintain our commitment to this effort and to this idea, and also to adjust the funding or adjust the investments to the funding envelope specifically.
Do I have time for one more question?
No,
okay. I'll cue back in then, please.
Okay, I'm going to, I know I will put you back in the list, but I do have to underscore the fact that we've spent hours debating this during the budget process. So staff have given us 2 alternatives, and I will go to people who haven't spoken yet. So Councillor Wolf, you're up.
Through you, Madam Chair, I guess two quick questions. One is the fee-for-service annualized? In other words, will it continue next year, or is this one-time funding?
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Through you, Chair Redmond, I believe I was asked this question through the budget process, and the assumption that we're making on those specific items is that they are annualized. These involve staff resources. That will, of course, be subject to Council's approval for the 2025 budget and going forward, but that would be the intention both in the requests that were made and the recommendations coming forward.
And second question, we did have earmarked, I think, $1.5 million operating for a women's shelter in Cambridge, though we had no location. If they found a location, would we still have any money for a women's shelter?
So we don't have any dollars allocated in the 2024 budget for either operating or capital to support a women's shelter in Cambridge. However, based on the need put forward and the strength of the proposal, as you might recall, staff endorsed the idea, and we are currently working with our partners at the YW in Cambridge to assist them in any way that we can to help them move that concept forward. And at such a time that that a viable proposal, both from a location and an operational model, comes forward, we will come back to council. I just don't know when that will be.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you, and thank you for the report and for working with us on this. It is complicated and complex, and I'm having a little trouble wrapping my mind around. This is all new and additional money, so anything that's in this plan is over and above what's in our existing complement of services that we provide. I think you said that earlier, but I just want to make sure I understand correctly.
Yes, so it's an increase. Council voted in December to increase the homelessness budget by $10.2 million based on a preliminary allocation of those resources that was 14.2. And so we've adjusted that again proportionally across, but this is all new money. I don't want to leave you the impression that this is all new work necessarily. Some of the investments are to add to existing pockets of work, and some are brand new initiatives all on their own.
So, for example, the line for motels. We currently use motels as part of our shelter system. So this would be additional use of motels for housing or whatever it may be. So if we, just for example, if we took the motels out as a line, what would that do? Like, and I don't want to nickel and dime, and I don't want to go through and do the analysis, because that's, you guys know what you're doing. But I'm just trying to understand how we choose.
Through you, Chair, that's exactly why we've recommended that you don't choose between line items. It's the reason for the recommendation that these priority areas, including motels and everything else on the list, are all needed in 2024. And we've just adjusted them into the investment envelope of $10.2 million.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through the chair, and forgive my ignorance, please, but we allocated money for the plan to end chronic homelessness. And then we allocated money to providers in our community that take care of homelessness and other situations. Now, is that correct? Or am I all screwed up here? Because all of a sudden I'm getting this letter, and we all got it, from the group saying, if you cut our funding, I think it said Show loses 1 full-time staff, and Porchlight loses, how many beds did Porchlight say they lose? 4 beds, and I'm sorry, but to me it sounds like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, you know, and I don't think that's what I wanted to do. I would rather find another solution than take away from the groups that provide the vital service. I know, Peter, you work really hard. I'm really proud of your staff and what they do. But I hope we can do better. And I'm not sure how, and I think we need more discussion.
So, Councillor Fox, and I will go to Peter.
Yes, I think I'll try to bring some further clarity to your comment, Councillor Foxton. Again, first, the fee-for-service proposals were all brand-new proposals that funding did not exist for those organizations last year. They came forward, they put forward an ask, we put forward our recommendation based on those that were eligible. The recommendation that is before you has two options. One is to allocate the $10.2 million on a proportional level to everything in the planned end chronic homelessness budget and the fee for service, or keep the fee for service requests from the community whole and allocate the remainder amongst the rest of the line items. So there's not, and again, without moving one item or not completely out of the picture. So if you are, as a council, as a councillor, as a council, wishing to maintain the original 100% request from those organizations that applied through the fee for service, then option 2 is your option.
Thank you so much. That's so much more clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Erb, who hasn't spoken on this, and then I'm hoping to deal with one of the recommendations from staff. Councillor Erb.
Mine are not questions. It was going to be to move the motion, but I just want to make a comment on Councillor Foxton's question. So just so we're clear, that any of the organizations got money for fee for service did not have any of that money or staff or programming in 2023. So any changes that they're needing to make in this interim period are all related to new hires, to new programming, to new money that they have in 24. It did not exist in 23. It's part of the new $10.2 million. I don't have any questions, so I'll wait until the other questions are done.
So, Councillor Erb, if you're prepared to move one of the recommendations, this would be your opportunity.
Okay. I'm happy, or I'm not, wouldn't say I'm happy, I'm prepared to move recommend, and I'm having trouble getting the report back up on my screen, but option number 1, where all of the services that have been suggested by our professional staff are reduced by an equal amount, so we create equity across the board. Going back just to what I said previously, this is all new dollars, all new services, all new staffing in 24. None of it existed in any of the organizations in 23. I'm concerned that if we, the rent supplements as an example, it's one of the most effective tools we have in ending chronic homelessness and getting people into supportive housing. We average 10 placements a month throughout the year, and to reduce that is less people that are going into housing. The risk of slowing down our second hybrid shelter, I don't think we want that to happen at all. And so, these new organizations that we asked to apply for this funding, they're going to do important work. Unfortunately, we can't fund them. And it's not lost on me that these organizations who applied all met the criteria. And to go back to what Councillor Hunick said, a Better Tent City, which does great work in the community, did not meet the criteria, and we have funded them. And again, we get into these political decisions and we do not take the advice of our professional staff. And I think they have defined 2 clear options for us here, and we should accept one of those options and let them get ahead and do their work. So I'm prepared to move the option where the reduction is spread equally across all of the services that are listed.
Thank you. So it's the option 1 has been moved by Councillor Erb. Is there a seconder? Councillor Williams? So we have further discussion, and again, colleagues, this is not an easy decision. I totally get that. I would also just reiterate, it's 10.2 million additional dollars that were not there in 2023. And I will go through the speakers list and then I'll ask to call the questions. So Councillor Deutschman, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Redmond. I appreciate Councillor Erb's comments, but I don't feel my position and role here is just to accept what is presented to us. I think respect is shown all around when we have the ability to question and debate and discuss. We're elected by the people of the community to present their views and their ideas. They've picked us to do this. Staff is crucial, obviously, for providing us with the information, and then we have to make decisions. So I just want to ask, I have a question for some clarification. Contribution to capital reserve, which capital reserve is that is referred to?
I think Mr. Dyer is going to answer that question.
Yes, through the chair, it's the Homelessness Prevention Capital Reserve. This was a reserve that was recommended by staff and approved by council to be established as part of the Plan to End Chronic Homelessness report, which was originally submitted back on November the 7th. And if I may, the purpose here is to then use that funding that's in that reserve in order to fund the construction of the next managed encampment at a location to be determined.
So is that different, Mr. Dyer, just for my clarification, is that different than the information you provided me about the other reserve earlier today?
So through the
I forget
chair,
the name of it, I'm sorry.
yeah. So through the chair, the Councillor Deutschman, the information I provided with you earlier today, the continuity was for the Strategic Investment in Affordable Housing Reserve, which is a different reserve funding a different program. The Homelessness Prevention Capital Reserve is brand new and will be established on our books in 2024.
Okay, so the funding, it's $3 million to build the new encampment. So this contribution is going towards that, and then the balance is made up from where? I saw that somewhere. I'm sorry, I've lost track.
Through the chair, the intent would be to, on a temporary basis, use some of the funding from the Strategic Investment in Affordable Housing Reserve in order to fund the capital expenditure in 2024, and then that reserve would be repaid in 2025.
And I note that there's $12.9 million in the Strategic Investment in Affordable Housing Capital Reserve currently.
Through the chair, that's an approximate figure for the end of 2023, subject to our 2023 year-end processes.
So what I'd like to do is move an amendment to the motion, and the amendment would be that $890,800 be taken from the contribution to capital reserve in option 1 to make whole the fee-for-service investments, and then the balance is the same. So it still ends up at 10.2 million.
Is there somebody to second that amendment? Moved by Councillor Shantz. So we're seeking some clarification, and I see a quizzical look on Craig Dyer's face. So Craig, would you like to comment how you perceive that amendment and what the impact would be?
So through the chair, I guess I think the clarification that would be helpful is council looking to amend the capital program, right? So we have a $3 million recommended capital project for the second hybrid shelter. if the contribution to the reserve that's going to be used to fund that expenditure is being reduced by approximately $900,000, then we have a $900,000 funding problem on the capital side. So I think some clarification around council's expectations with respect to the hybrid shelter would be helpful.
If I could, Madam Chair, since it's my motion and Mr. Dyer's, I should respond to that question. The reason I asked about the the strategic investment in affordable housing capital reserve is there's $12.9 million in that reserve at the end of 2023. The 900,000 could be made up from that capital reserve.
So if I may, through the chair again, I think the challenge is the 12.9 million that's estimated to be in that reserve at the end of 2023 is almost 100% committed already in 2024. So we would then have to there's a bit of a domino effect here, and we would have to look at what other projects in 2024, many of which have already been approved and are being funded over a period of time, could be impacted. It would take us a little bit of effort to sort that out.
Right, Madam Chair, in light of that information, it's my fault for not asking additional information about whether that, I was looking at the historical use of that fund, which was approximately 5 million on average per year, and I assumed that there would have been enough available in 2024, but based on this new information that Mr. Dyer's provided, saying that the 12.9 is almost wholly committed in 2024, then I'll withdraw my amendment.
Thank you. And is my recollection, Councillor Shantz? So are you amenable to withdrawing that motion? Okay. Thank you. Colleagues, it's difficult to make policy on the fly, and unintended consequences will forever be the boogeyman of any kind of public policy. So I'm going to suggest that we have a motion that has been moved. We've been given two directions by staff that if you don't like option one, vote against it, and then we can consider option two. We've had, and again, I would totally acknowledge that these are difficult decisions, but I would also tell you that we know this is only the first installment of our plan to end chronic homelessness, and that there will be a spring report that is coming back that will have a price tag on it that I would contend is probably higher than what we were considering through the budget. And it will be at that juncture that we are then going to be able to take our plan to the provincial and federal governments and say, we have done the journeyman work, we have talked to people with lived experience in our jurisdiction, and we need them to come to the table to help fund. So it's been moved, it's been seconded. I have three other speakers. Does anybody want to speak to the motion that is on the floor? Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I've heard some murmurs of delaying or deferring the vote, and I think that would be really unfair to the fee-for-service proposers who are awaiting this funding today.
Thank you. Councillor Prevanovic.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And listen, these are important decisions, and I hear from a number of our colleagues who feel that even in terms of the motions that were dealt with on Budget Day, there was a lack of clarity in terms of what the $4 million applied to, and was it future dollars versus current dollars, and so on. And I see some folks nodding their heads, and certainly I was of that opinion too. You know I have a number of questions still. Mr. Sweeney answered some. I have some more that he said he could answer this evening. There's some that he said he can't answer this evening, that he needs to get information from staff. I'm not prepared to rush a decision and potentially make, to compound a bad decision. Secondly, as I read the report, it references the role of engagement with area municipalities. I will ask the question specifically on these issues. Was there specific discussion with area municipalities and what the impacts will be in these various areas?
Peter?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. To go back to my original comment, there is nothing new in this report that didn't come forward back in November. And so the work with the community and with area municipalities existed through through the development of that original budget process. We did not go back to area municipalities specifically with thoughts and options on how to take the original budget request and reallocate it into a different envelope.
So I guess, my concern, Madam Chair, is, I understand this is difficult work. And when you read the report, it reads to suggest that, perhaps like the conversations happened, but maybe they didn't happen. We heard that, in fact, they didn't happen specifically in relation to this report. At the end of the day, these are issues that are impacting our neighborhoods and our communities. And I can tell you, my area councillors, my city councillors, are dealing with these issues each and every day, particularly in the areas where some of these services are being dealt with. So I want to make sure that when we're making decisions, we're not adding and compounding to some of these things. And so I do think that, and I will move a deferral on this issue so that there can be additional dialogue happening with staff, that there can be some further dialogue amongst members of council, and we can see whether or not we can deal with this issue.
So time and place?
Well, the place obviously would be here, and in terms of timing, just pulling up our schedule in terms of meetings. Hang on. Certainly open. We could do it at a special council, I guess, on February 6th, or we could deal it at regular council on February the 21st. I'm not sure if members of council have a preference. Sensitive to some of the timing issues that need to, in terms of the support that some of these groups need. I would say let's do, if you're amenable to calling a special council meeting on the 6th, that we can do it then.
Okay, so the suggestion is be deferred to a special council meeting on February 6th. Is there somebody that is seconding that deferral? Councillor Craig, okay, I'm calling the question. So we have a motion to defer this until February the 6th. We're just going to get it up on the screen. So it has been moved by Councillor Ravanovich, seconded by Councillor Craig, that the Regional Municipality of Waterloo defer the motion discussed under item 14.1 to February the 6th. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Calling that as carried, it will be deferred till February the 6th. The next agenda item is a motion for Committee of the Whole to rise and Council to resume. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Maybe Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Nowak. Please use your e-scribe to vote. That is carried, colleagues. I now need a motion for proceedings of the Committee of the Whole. So the Council adopt proceedings of Committee of the Whole. If I could have a mover. Moved by Councillor Wolf, seconded by Councillor Foxton. Please use e-scribe to vote. That is carried, colleagues. There are no motions. We do have a notice of motion. Councillor Wolf, you have a notice of motion on the order paper?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Deutschmann. Whereas the region of Waterloo, like other regions across Ontario and Canada, is in the midst of an affordable housing crisis. And whereas between 2021 and 2022, population growth in the region of Waterloo grew at twice the rate of the Canadian average, with rental prices rising 141%, with 8,391 applicants on the wait list for affordable housing, with an average wait time for housing at more than 7 years. Now therefore, be it resolved that Council requests staff to include the following regionally owned assets in scope as they develop plans to build more affordable housing in our community: parking lots, vacant properties, and buildings that could be repurposed through redevelopment. And that staff provide Council with a report that includes feasible locations, land and building ownership options, and construction concepts, including potential partners. And speaking to the motion?
Go ahead.
First of all, I would like to thank the delegates who spoke in favor of this motion for their support of creative ideas in finding solutions for our housing crisis. The delegates did such a great job in telling us why we should investigate housing over parking and public land. I will be brief. I would also like to thank the impressive number of organizations which also support the motion. Council is well aware of our need for supportive housing, affordable housing, and attainable housing. Staff is to be commended for being willing to look at all regional properties, including parking lots, buildings, and vacant land, which the region owns, through a housing lens. I would like to thank staff for helping me to word this motion so that it did not stop simply with parking lots, of which the region has a limited number, but extended it to include all regional property. Waterloo region is noted for being innovative, and I think it is appropriate that we examine creative ideas to meet our housing goals. Housing is a priority in our strategic plan and in our plan to end chronic homelessness. I am hoping Council will pass this motion unanimously tonight to demonstrate the region's commitment to looking at all solutions to increase our housing supply. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Deutschmann is seconder. Would you like to, Councillor Deutschmann, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to thank Councillor Wolf for sort of stepping into the breach on this at a time when a motion similar to this was defeated at the City of Cambridge, unfortunately, and seemed to cast the region in a certain light. Councillor Wolf wanted to step forward and show that the region is innovative and progressive in its thinking. And I want to thank Commissioner Sweeney and staff for helping craft a motion that I felt was most appropriate given the region's circumstances, available assets, and the potential to do something with what we have. And it helped clarify all of that. And in addition to all of the other people that delegated and spoke today on it, I look forward to staff coming back with some concepts or ideas, following up on what Councillor Craig had questioned one of the delegates about Mr. Doucette, who is extremely experienced in this area, and his suggestion about trying to find a quick win of some sort to demonstrate our intentions. Even though we have, of course, the 2,500 homes in 5 years project, which we're well ahead on, and other innovative ideas like Build Now that we're working on. But this is just another way to show the Waterloo region way. And thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Vanovich.
Thank you very much. And I too want to thank Councillor Wolf for moving this and Councillor Deutschmann for seconding it and bringing it forward, as well as I know Councillor Hamilton has worked with Councillor Wolf as well as Councillor Schneider, who brought it to our council on Monday, along with Mr. Doucette and the other delegations two Dans and others who presented this evening. So thank you to everyone for coming forward as part of those presentations. I think what this shows is that a one-size solution for every municipality doesn't fit. We may like it to fit. We all have our different views on it. But the reality is, different municipalities, different councils determine what they feel is right for their community. And the beauty of our local structure is that if it doesn't fit in one, it may fit in another, and we have an opportunity to consider it and deal with that. And that's what we're doing this evening. And I'm hopeful that it will be unanimous here, like it was unanimous at Kitchener Council on Monday. So thank you.
Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as Dan Dreger said in his presentation, this is an easy motion to support, and I'm happy to support it. And thanks to my colleagues for bringing it to council. Thanks for those who delegated this evening. I think for the number of delegations we had this evening, and they only spoke maybe 1 or 2 seconds over their limit or even under their limit, was set a record for the number of delegations and the time. So thank you. But special thanks to Councillor Scott Hamilton for initiating this conversation. It feels like it sort of started with a small snowball, and it's gone and become much bigger. And so thank you for that. It's created some momentum. I want to remind my colleagues on council what the region is already doing. I have a list here of 8 projects that under our Building Better Futures initiative that we began in 21, where we have developed on new sites or on existing sites. We've created 375 affordable units by using our surplus lands or lands that already exist. And so those are 8 projects. I have another list here of 34 projects that were completed or in the process of being completed in the region where we've been using surplus lands or working with other partnerships, and they range from the YW, One Roof Cambridge not-for-profit, the KW Urban Native Wigwam in Cambridge Spruce Lawn in St. Jacobs, St. Paul's, St. Peter's, the Working Center. And so much of what is in this motion the region has been working at, and I'm sure we can build on that as ready. And this week, if it hasn't happened, later this week, we're issuing another RFP for a significant parcel of land that we own on Highland Road, where we're going to be asking for calls for proposals to build housing. And the requirement that we're going to ask in this building is 40% affordable units. So the region is well on the way to doing some of the things that are already in Councillor Wolf's motion, but it will be helpful for staff to come back with some other options and some other ideas. And I'm happy to support this.
Councillor Craig.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I certainly will support this. And I believe, too, that we send a message if we unanimously support this as a regional council. I have some disappointment in the beginning of all of this process at Cambridge Council, but here we are today to set a new, I think, standard in terms of who we are as a regional community. I think on top of all of this, and this is only a part of the affordable problems that we're having, is that we need to understand that we certainly need more funding and more legislation from the province to support us in all of these endeavors. And I hope when we meet with the area MPs and MPPs that we can present them with a position paper, much like Toronto, in terms of things we want and want them to work on in terms of helping us as a regional community. And I think that would be a way forward. And I think finally, if I may, when you come to light with what's happening in the community, something that isn't talked about too much, but as part of the overall affordability issue, is young people that end up graduating or out having a job but can't afford it and are living at home. And we have a lot of people like that throughout the regional community. Some person described it to me as the new homeless in a sense. And I think there's some merit in how it's looked at in that sense also. So I'd like to thank Councillor Wolf, and I don't thank her that often, might go to her head, but certainly I've enjoyed working with her and supporting her 9 out of 10 times. So this is one I do support you on.
There's room for improvement.
So I would just like to commend the public, but I would tell you that the community, and I know some of you sitting in this gallery have carried this notion forward for probably a year or two that I've known about. So thank you very much, and never think that a small committed group of the community can't make a difference, because you have. And I would just also like to underscore that every area council does what they think is in the best interest of their council, and the beauty of the region is that we reach every corner of the all 7 area municipalities. So thank you for bringing this innovation forward, and we'll look forward to being creative as we go forward, meeting the need of housing and affordable housing. So thank you all for coming and for your commitment. And it's been moved and seconded, and now we will have a vote. Please use your e-scribe. Colleagues, that is carried. The next councillor item is Councillor Craig. You have a notice of motion, and I believe you were planning to withdraw it, so I will give you the floor.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I won't say too much about it. Apparently, the Legislative Committee is coming back at some time, and I think that's great, because a number of people that wished to speak at that moment did not have the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Craig. We have no unfinished business, but under other business, colleagues, I would like to take a moment on behalf of Council to extend my heartfelt condolences and deepest sympathies to the family of the late James Weidman. Jim was a regional councillor for 14 years, and as well a Wellesley councillor for 5 years, and at the Waterloo Regional District School Board for 6 years. While perhaps best remembered for his advocacy for light rail transit, I will remember Jim most for who he was as a person, a decent and caring leader with a deep passion for his neighbors and his community. He was a man who was universally respected. Jim passed away on January the 9th, 2024 at Cape Coral Hospital, Florida, with his wife Christine at his side. And Christine and Jim and I all served as public school trustees. Friends and family are invited to share memories of Jim at the Henry Walser Funeral Home located at 507 Frederick Street, Kitchener. Visitation is tomorrow from 5 to 8 and Friday 2 to 4 and 6 to 8. A funeral service will celebrate Jim's life, and it will be held at First Mennonite Church, 800 King Street, East Kitchener at 3 p.m. this Saturday. In accordance with regional policy, flags are at half-mast in recognition of Jim's service to community. And before we adjourn, I'd ask everyone to stand and observe a minute of silence. Thank you, colleagues. Colleagues, are there any questions before we adjourn? So I would entertain a motion to enact bylaws of first, second, and third readings. If I could have a first and moved by Councillor Hunick, seconded by Councillor Shantz. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Colleagues, that is carried. And now everybody's favorite motion, a motion to adjourn. Made by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Wolf. Please use your e-scribe to vote.